Sup everyone, Michael here with a quick message before we get to today's video. Yes, the Symphony of the Night review was supposed to come out after Knuckles Chaotix, but I'm holding off on that for just a little while longer. The reason being that there are so many different kinds of perspectives and elements to discuss with that game, and I'm not quite satisfied with the script I've had long done for it. The video isn't being scrapped or anything like that at all, but I'm making an effort to keep moving forward and produce more consistently as much as possible. Sorry for any disappointments, this certainly wasn't intentional, but I hope you enjoy this review of Mega Man X2 either way. Mega Man X is widely seen as one of the Super Nintendo's finest titles. Many people absolutely love the gameplay innovation, the 16-bit graphical update, and the rocking music. While I largely enjoy the game as much as the next guy, I have to play the devil's advocate here and say I believe it has its problems. If you haven't seen my review on it yet, I suggest you check it out before diving further into this video for better context. After the universal acclaim Mega Man X had received from critics and fans alike, Capcom had massive shoes to fill with the inevitable follow-up. However, as series tradition would have it back then, Mega Man X2 came out only a year after the original. Reception for the game has been primarily positive, but some publications found it to be uninspired or complain about its lack of innovation, and it seems X2 didn't sell as well as its predecessor, since X1 is notably less rare and expensive nowadays. Also, gamers of today mostly hail the first Mega Man X as the best, while the second and third installments tend to be forgotten or written off as bland and inferior. That's not to say nobody appreciates the sequels, but all you need to do is compare the views on long plays and soundtrack videos to see what I mean. Considering that I strive to be as unbiased as possible and don't have a nostalgic attachment to any Mega Man game, let's see how my experiences with X2 stack up. It has been 6 months since the defeat of Sigma, but the Maverick Rebellion is still continuing. X and a new generation of Maverick Hunters are directed to an abandoned Reploid factory by Dr. Kane in the hope to wipe out the remaining Mavericks. After investigating the factory, X is assigned to seek and exterminate 8 more Mavericks, but somewhere in the last half year, a group calling themselves the X Hunters, consisting of the 3 powerful Mavericks Sergis, Agile, and Violin, have managed to obtain the diseased Zero's body parts. The X-Hunters have been keeping an eye out on X and fear their Mavericks may not be able to take him down, causing the X-Hunters to intervene themselves. Each of them promise X a part of Zero's body under the condition he wins a one-on-one battle, in an ultimate attempt to destroy X on their own. See, this is kind of what I meant when criticizing the storytelling of the original Mega Man X. Everything is explained within the game itself in this second installments. You're not missing any context as long as you read the dialogue, and sniffing around in the manual or on an online wiki leaves you with pretty much the same details. Less actually with the former source. In X1, all the game tells you is that Vile is a dick. You don't have an idea of X's origins, the world's circumstances, or who Sigma is for that matter. That didn't ruin the experience or whatever, but hats off to X2 for informing the player more about what's going on, both upon booting the system and as you progress the plot. Enough with the story though, this is a 1994 side-scroller where gameplay is the most important aspect. That said, Mega Man X2 is structurally identical to its predecessor. You run and gun through 8 stages selectable in any order, destroy a Maverick at the end of each of them, and then take on a set of harder levels paving the way to the final boss. The controls have been left untouched too, meaning they're responsive, allow you to manipulate your height and trajectory in midair, and simply never hinder you. X's wall jumping and dashing abilities are still here and accounted for with all their benefits, though you can now dash right from the start. What a wonderful thing! X can also learn to do an airborne dash, which is a nifty expansion, and it's nowhere near as vital for dodging as regular dashing was in X1, so I don't mind it being an unlockable. Like last time, eliminating a Maverick grants you its weapon. With 8 new Mavericks in total, there are 8 new weapons to acquire. Each firearm has its own unique properties, giving them different uses in different situations, and one may deal more damage to an enemy or boss than the other. Using the Silk Shot on Magnus Centipede rids him of his tail and makes the fight easier, while Violent cannot be hurt by anything other than the X-Buster or Bubble Splash. Such an arsenal of various weapons is a consistent theme in the Mega Man franchise, and one that has always increased replay value ever since its inception. Same applies to Mega Man X2. It feels satisfying to discover weaknesses and come up with your own clever ways of clearing the Room of Evil, and it gives the player an incentive to experiment with completing the stages in numerous orders to see what's most ideal. However, the applications of the majority of weapons are very situational this time around. The X-Buster served me much better when plowing through the levels themselves. In fact, even all the Mavericks are manageable to beat without exploiting their weaknesses. Having the correct gun certainly helps, but it's by no means required. I was able to clear all 8 main stages using merely the X-Buster without any upgrades whatsoever. Some bosses are harder than others, sure, but as long as you are fairly familiar with the way X handles, capable of analyzing and learning boss strategies, and have good reflexes, you should never feel at a disadvantage. This is quite the improvement over X1, where about half of the Mavericks are next to impossible to overcome as a first pick, because you're missing a specific item. I understand that to many fans, that is what makes Mega Man games special, but to me it remains bad game design, and I'm glad X2 reduced the frustration significantly. The boss encounters are great in general if you ask me. At times their attacks are a bit hard to predict, which can be a little cheap, and some battles are somewhat slow, but I much enjoyed my time with them. The Mavericks keep you on your toes and sport multiple different strategies from one another. They make for very interesting showdowns, especially when using the X-Buster. Mini bosses in the middle of a stage are also fun, in addition to showing up more frequently. 50% of them aren't anything to really write home about, but the other 50% have quite a lot going on and are decently challenging. Of course, how challenging the game is again, besides the weapons you have, also dependent on the number of upgrades you possess. Mega Man X2 brings back the exploration for 8 heart containers, 4 collectible sub-tanks, and 4 new armor expansions in full force. Once again, you can find 2 of the mentioned items in every stage to increase your overall defense and versatility. Locating them is usually a matter of having an eye for these sort of secrets like last time, but there's also some cryptic stuff in this second game. Fortunately, one of the stages contains a radar that highlights suspicious areas, from where on it's more about coming up with a solution to gain further access. I honestly kinda like that, but it does suck you can't use any other weapons as long as the radar is on screen. Like last time, you're free to revisit already completed levels, so you can never permanently miss an item. And I also got the impression you could collect slightly more without needing certain abilities found elsewhere, because oftentimes there is more than one possible approach. This holds true for the original as well, I just don't recall it to nearly the same extent. And in my books, the armor upgrades are more exciting this time. A helmet that breaks the very occasional block in X1, whatever. A periodically unleashable screen nuke in X2, pretty cool. On top of that, I think Mega Man just looks more badass fully fleshed out in X2 than in X1. I would go as far to state that even the level design as a whole has seen a boost in quality. As I brought up in the Mega Man X review, I found the game stages a tad too focused on combating enemies. This is neither good or bad, it's more of a preference thing. Be that as it may, I'm pleased X2 has upped the ante with regards to platforming through stage hazards and gimmicks. Whether you have to land precise jumps under bad weather conditions, quickly dodge moving crushing blocks, climb a mountain with rising lava beneath you, ride a platform that changes its direction every time you land on it, the threat doesn't solely come from the foes, but from both the foes and the environment. It's not only a balance I prefer, but also prevents the game from becoming a massive cakewalk regardless of your equipment, and it's more akin to the way classic Mega Man did things. Admittedly, it can appear as if you're being tricked by something you couldn't predict, but that's only once in a blue moon, and I'm glad the layouts aren't as happy-go-lucky as in X1. They usually aren't as narrow and flat either, and contain more nooks and crannies with health, ammunition, or extra lives. Icing on the cake at this point. The only levels I don't care much for are Desert Base and Deep Sea Base, the former centering around an awkwardly controlled bike and the latter being overly spacious. But even then, I don't dislike them, and any minor nitpicks I may have had with all the other stages, I have forgotten about. One element Mega Man X2 is lacking compared to the previous title is the selection of the stages altering depending on where you've already been. Remember how the Flame Mammoth level is entirely frozen over after whooping some chill penguin butt? Well, there's nothing comparable to speak of in X2. I am not fussed about this omission, but it is a tiny layer of depth gone that other players may have very much enjoyed. Making up for this though is the side quest of restoring Zero from the events of X1. Upon blowing up your second Maverick, the 3 X-Hunters start spreading themselves across random stages, and every time you get a game over or take down a boss, they move elsewhere. In order to meet an X-Hunter, you have to enter a level that is currently invaded and proceed to locate its respective secret door, a task the aforementioned radar can assist you in. Defeating an X-Hunter gets you one of the 3 body parts of Zero, and succeeding to retrieve them all before finishing the last of the regular 8 main stages will alter the endgame. It becomes simpler to win the final set of battles, and the ending is ever so minimally changed, but it's ridiculously underwhelming. The reward you get for going the extra mile definitely should have been more worthwhile. The developers truly missed the mark here, but it's a good thing the side quest in and of itself is entertaining. Finding the secret doors increases exploration even more, and the actual X-Hunter fights are well designed. It's an optional method of getting the most out of the game, which is always welcome, and it adds more meat to the game than the changing stages in X1. To tell you the truth, not only do I consider Mega Man X2 better in the gameplay department than its predecessor, but visually I find it more appealing too. The first game contains a lot of gray and brown. It looks pretty dull and gritty the more I think about it. Fortunately, X2 makes more extensive use of the Super Nintendo's color capabilities, which is likely a byproduct of its art direction. Desert Base isn't any less bland and static than Chill Penguin stage, but then settings like Deep Sea Base and Dinosaur Tank come along to wipe the floor with most of the ones X1 has to offer. The level theming on the whole is also more diversified, from a beautiful crystal cave to a junkyard full of scrap metal, and from an erupting volcano to a high security computer room. What makes great graphics is subjective, and I don't mean to continuously harp on those of X1, but that's just how the two compare for me. I would like to announce the slowdown issues have been dealt with, but they are sadly just as bad. And then there's the CX4 chip. Apparently the team was instructed to use this extra processor in the cartridge in as many ways imaginable, but all it really does is render the rare wireframe objects. I wasn't too excited about this, but perhaps it was impressive back then? Couldn't really find any trivia on that. Finally, we reached the topic of audio, and Mega Man X2's soundtrack is a tricky one to address. It does away with the symphonic synth rock of the first game and instead sounds more like the classic series. What I mean by that, the songs are generally calmer and not as orchestrated with guitars. If you ask me, this style of music doesn't quite suit the X games, and many arrangements lack the depth and power of the ones in the previous game. There are some tunes in here as well that are painfully short and forgettable to boot, giving me the impression they are rushed and unfinished. X1 has my preferred soundtrack, there's no contest, but it would be short-sighted of with me to ignore the great compositions present in X2. Weather Control, Energon Crystal Mine, and Deep Sea Base contain catchy pieces I can get down with, and the drum lines in some of the songs are kind of intense and metal, which is cool to hear on the Super Nintendo. All in all, Mega Man X2's soundtrack on its own is fine, but nothing remarkable in my eyes. However, similarly to visuals, everybody has different tastes in music, so who am I to say which of the two X-cores is superior? The best you can do is simply observe and decide for yourself. Something I encourage you do your entire life long with anything and everything anyway. In conclusion, Mega Man X2 is a lot of second verse same as the first. It really doesn't do much in terms of innovation, and while some people use that as a means of criticizing the game, I have zero problems with such an approach for a sequel. Many elements that made the original X title so outstanding return in X2. Tight controls, a technical moveset, delightful bosses, tons of weapons and upgrades, and high replay value. The adventure overall may not have had the same evolutionary impact, but as far as I'm concerned, Mega Man X2 fine-tunes the gameplay formula in nearly all the right places. The level design distributes platforming and shooting down enemies more equally, and the game is way more fair due to X being capable of dashing from the get-go, as well as the fact each Maverick is perfectly beatable all naked. Throw in a compelling side quest to save your friends and more sophisticated storytelling, and it's evident to me Mega Man X2 outclasses its 1 year older brother. If you are a fan of the first X game or Mega Man in general, do yourself a favor and try out X2. Unless you're willing to put down some big bucks for the SNES cartridge, especially the PAL version, my god. A simple international option to buy Mega Man X2 is the Wii or Wii U's Virtual Console. Still, I highly recommend American audiences to go the Mega Man X collection for PlayStation 2 route instead, which will get you X1 up to X6 without slowdown issues and for a very attractive price point. Even people from other regions should consider importing this collection if they know how to play the disc on their consoles. Whether you live in the States or not, just make sure you don't use component cables or that your TV can process a 240p signal over components. The games will not display otherwise, so be very wary of that. And that about wraps it up for today's review, guys. Again, sorry about Symphony of the Night, it's definitely being worked on, no worries. And if you want more insight on current and future projects, be sure to check out my Facebook and Twitter pages. I avoid updating through YouTube because I want to guarantee each and every single video of mine that you get in your subscription box is worthwhile and of high quality. That said, I hope you enjoyed my take on Mega Man X2. Thanks for watching and showing your support, and may all of you have a great day.